Hello and welcome to the second annual New Jersey Youth Transition Conference. My name is Audrey Mariani and I represent the Camden County Family Support Organization on behalf of the YTC Planning Committee. We'll place a registration form in the chat box for you to share with your contact information so that we can share the recordings and resources with you from this workshop. Please note, for those who are seeking continuing education credit, you're required to complete the form as this is the contact method in which we will send your proof of attendance. Today's workshop will be hosted via the same link you have joined on with today. You can see the full schedule on our website, and I will be sharing the agenda. Well, Amy will be sharing the agenda on the screen at the conclusion of today's workshop. Our presenter today is the wonderful, tremendous, and exceptional April DiPietro from the Camden County Partnership for Children, Camden County CMO, who will present on the Children's System of Care, CSOC Basics. Have at it, kid.
All right. Can you share the PowerPoint for me?
Just pull it up.
Thank you, ma'am.
I'm going to put it in presenter mode. Can you see the screen?
Sure can.
Is it presenter mode?
Yeah, but you have to do the clicking of the slides.
Yeah. It's fine. I just want to make sure that you can see the big screen. That's all.
Yep, we can see it. Hopefully everyone else can as well. Good evening. As Audrey said, my name is April DiPietro. I work with the Camden County Partnership for Children, but today I'm going to be presenting on New Jersey Children's System of Care, the basics. Just so everyone knows, New Jersey's Children's System of Care is underneath New Jersey Department of Children and Families. Next slide, please. So Children's System of Care objectives are to help youth succeed by staying safe, healthy, and connected. It's just kind of like their motto. Next slide, please. So here's just a little breakdown. So there's DCF. Under DCF, you have DCP&P, Division of Child Protection and Permanency. Alongside of that is Children's System of Care. Perform Care is the contracted system administrator for Children's System of Care. And then underneath Perform Care, you have 3 agencies that are representative in each county across New Jersey, and these 3 agencies work very closely together to help youth and families. You have the CMO, which stands for Care Management Organization, MRSS, which is Mobile Response Stabilization Services, and then the Family Support Organization. So under Perform Care, these are the 3 entities that help youth and families across the state. Next slide, please. So knowing the breakdown is really important. As I said earlier, New Jersey's Department of Children and Families is kind of like the umbrella. Under that, it is Children's System of Care. Perform Care, the contracted system administrator, who you call to access services 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365. Perform Care dispatches mobile response and stabilization services and/or connects the youth and family to their local care management organization if and when it is clinically appropriate. We'll get into that a little bit later in the presentation. Next slide, please. So I'm going to play right now a video for you. It's a commercial that was created by Perform Care. It's on their website. Audrey will get that up in just a moment.
Of Care and Perform Care are ready to help you and your family when you call 1-877-652-7624. Since 2001, the Children's System of Care has been connecting New Jersey's families and young people to the care they need by helping them access publicly funded services for youth up to age 21 through the statewide New Jersey Children's System of Care. Perform Care can assist your family when your child is impacted by depression, trauma, bullying, violence, defiant behavior, drug or alcohol use, developmental disabilities such as autism, Down syndrome, or cerebral palsy. We are available to help you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and 365 days a year at 1-877-652-7624. There is no charge for calling Perform Care. When you call Perform Care, you will be connected to a trained associate who will ask for some information about you and the child you are calling about so they can best assist you, such as the reasons for your call, your child's date of birth, and address. If your child is in crisis, Perform Care can send a clinician to your home or to an agreed-upon location in the community within an hour to help stabilize the situation and offer additional services as needed. In addition, Perform Care can help you locate the nearest psychiatric screening center or contact emergency services. Other available services include referring a child for assessment, where an independently licensed clinician can come to the home and review your child's biological, psychological, and social factors. Perform Care can also refer you to community services and/or recommendations for outpatient services. Substance use treatment services, referrals, and authorizations are available through Perform Care for eligible youth. The Children's System of Care also offers services for youth impacted by intellectual and developmental disabilities. The first step to accessing these services is to apply for eligibility for developmental disability services. Specially trained Perform Care associates are available to help explain the process. At the end of your call to Perform Care, you can expect an explanation of any services being authorized or recommended, as well as the next steps. You will also receive a letter in the mail explaining the service or services you have been authorized to receive. Beginning with just a phone call, Perform Care can help you connect your child to the behavioral health, substance use, or developmental disability service he or she needs to be well and thrive. We are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and 365 days a year at 1-877-652-7624.
Thank you, Audrey.
Is it full screen, April?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
There we go. Okay, so how to access New Jersey Children's System of Care. Sometimes you'll hear it referred to as CSOC. The parent or legal guardian has to call Perform Care directly when seeking services for a youth up to the age of 21. So for example, someone from the school can't call on behalf of the family. The parent or legal guardian has to be present when the phone call is made. Perform Care is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365. Doesn't matter if it's a holiday, 2 o'clock in the middle of the night. If the family is struggling or needs some assistance and help, they can call Perform Care at any hour by calling 1-877-652-7624. As I said earlier, Perform Care is going to triage the initial call and determine the next steps. Next slide, please. So examples of when a guardian should give a call to Perform Care. If the youth is struggling to meet the needs or the family is struggling to meet the needs of a developmentally disabled or intellectually disabled child or adolescent, if the child refuses to attend school or has repeated latenesses, skipping class, etc., or if you have other concerns about the child's performance, if the child shows physical and or verbal aggression, is being bullied or being bullied by others, or if you observe family conflict, including youth substance use or refusal to comply with rules. These are just some examples of when a family could give a call to Perform Care, but I typically say if you're struggling or when you're in doubt, it never hurts to pick up the phone and call and just kind of explain what your challenges are. Next slide, please. So Children's System of Care partners, as I mentioned earlier, underneath Perform Care is Mobile Response, the Care Management Organization, and the Family Support Organization. As I mentioned earlier, each county in New Jersey has all three of these entities to support the youth and families in that county. So Mobile Response, their main role is to de-escalate a crisis situation and to intervene and offer some support. Treatment planning and family safety planning. They do a level of care management. They provide access to community resources such as food banks, support groups, etc. They can do referrals to other follow-up services, and to access Mobile Response, Perform Care dispatches them to the family. So again, if a family is in crisis, no matter what that crisis might look like, they're going to call Perform Care. And when someone answers the phone at Perform Care, they're going to ask a series of questions like the commercial explained. Depending on the answers to those questions that the family is asked, the Perform Care representative is going to make a decision of whether or not this is an active crisis where the child is harming themselves or others and safety is of a concern. They're going to dispatch mobile response, and mobile will go out within an hour, no matter where the family is, to help de-escalate and, help the family through that process. If the child is not in an active crisis, but clearly there's, some need for intervention, the family will be offered 3 agencies by Medicaid regulation to have a licensed clinician come to the home and complete a biopsychosocial evaluation. Depending on what that renders, Perform Care will make the decision if the family and young person meet the clinical criteria for the care management organization in their county. If that's the case, then CMO would open and we work with the family and link them with the resources that they need to thrive. But the first and most important thing is to, when in doubt, call Perform Care. The care management organization, like I said, there's a CMO agency in each county across the state. All services are voluntary and at no cost to the family. Oftentimes, CMO and Perform Care gets confused or interchanged with DCP&P. So it's really important that we help educate the community to understand that CMO services are voluntary. We're here to help if and when the family wants our help. CMO provides care management services, not case management. It's care management because people aren't numbers, they're families and individuals, and the work that we do requires a lot of collaboration and listening. So we provide care management services for youth and families with complex needs. And again, to access any of these services that we talk about today, the first step is always to call Perform Care. It's the single point of access for the services that I will discuss today. And then last but not least are the family support organizations across the state. They're family run and county based. They provide direct family to family peer support, education, advocacy, and other services to family members of youth with CMO services. You don't have to have CMO in order to engage with your local family support organization. Most of what they do is 100% free and community-based. So if you don't already know, please use the website on the bottom, go to the Perform Care website and search for the family support list of family support organizations. There's one in every county, and get connected. They're fantastic, the work that they do in each community, and it's free. If a family is open with their county's CMO, you get an option of having a parent partner come into the home the same way the care manager comes into the home. And I'll get into that a little bit later, but the FSO is a fantastic resource, but many people are confused and they think it's only a service that they can tap into if they have CMO already, but that's not the case. So please, I encourage everyone, if you haven't already, explore and find out about your local FSO office, and that stands for Family Support Organization. Again, FSO services are voluntary and at no cost to the family. Most of what I'm going to talk about today is at no cost to the family, which is really good. Next slide, please. Family Success Centers, not to be confused with the FSO. Family Success Centers are free one-stop shops that provide wraparound resources and supports for families before they find themselves in a crisis. They offer primary child abuse prevention services to families and bring together concerned community residents, leaders, and agencies to address the problems that threaten the safety and stability of families in our community. A complete list and link of the Family Success Centers can be found on the DCF website. Next slide, please. Mobile response and stabilization services. As I said earlier, they conduct assessments for crisis intervention. This can happen at home, at school, a doctor's office, the police station, literally anywhere in the community. If and when the family calls Perform Care and it is deemed necessary or appropriate to dispatch that county's mobile response, mobile will meet the family where the family is, because sometimes a crisis doesn't happen at home. Maybe it did happen at school or while you were out in the community, or maybe, God forbid, the child is at the police station. So just so everyone understands, if mobile is dispatched from Perform Care, they're going to go out within an hour wherever the family is to help de-escalate the crisis situation. Our main goal is to prevent young kids and families from having to go to the crisis screening center. If that's something that we can prevent and avoid, that's, we're going to do that. Depending on the level of need, a 72-hour stabilization service is put into place, or 8-week stabilization. So typically what's happening is, if mobile is dispatched, they're going to meet the family where they are. They're going to immediately put in interventions and therapeutic supports, and they're going to monitor for 8 weeks. They're going to see if this was a isolated situation or is this a deeper rooted challenge. If it exceeds the 8 weeks, the worker at Mobile Response puts information into the system that we use in the state, which is called Cyber. Everything that we do gets documented and reviewed by Perform Care for clinical appropriateness. If at the end or towards the end of the 8-week process, if the Mobile Response care manager feels that the child needs a little bit more time, isn't quite yet stable or ready to transition to community-based resources, they're going to put in a request in Cyber to have that youth and family opened to that county's care management organization. And we pass the baton. So it would go from mobile to the CMO, and then we partner with the FSO in the efforts that we do. If needs are significant and or the youth is intellectually, developmentally disabled, Mobile Response may recommend CMO services to Perform Care. Perform Care makes all determinations regarding CMO services. So sometimes I hear, because I work at a CMO in Camden County, CMO denied me for blank. That's never the case. It is never the CMOs that make those determinations. Everything comes from Perform Care. Next slide, please. So a little bit more about the care management organizations. CMOs work with youth who have a need for a higher level of care and intensive planning. Like Mobile Response, CMOs aim to have youth and families transition to community-based, sustainable resources. Care management is not limited by a time constraint. Child and family team meetings are held regularly and result in the youth and family developing a plan with input from the team members. Care managers regularly contact involved child family team members to coordinate and track the progress of the plan. Youth can be re-enrolled up until their 21st birthday. So these are just some things that I hear in the community. A family might be like, oh, I had CMO back when, Johnny was 5. Well, Johnny's 14 now, and maybe dad's incarcerated, or he's struggling in school and now has an IEP, or whatever the case may be. It doesn't matter how many times a family might need the help. If they've been through Perform Care in the past, if you're struggling and you need the help, when in doubt, call Perform Care again. Every time you call, you're just going to give a snapshot of what's happening in that present moment. You can, of course, say, yes, I've had CMO before, but, this is today's challenge. When in doubt, call Perform Care. We want to make sure that the community understands who we are, how to access services, and what it is that we actually do. Next slide, please. So a little bit more about the FSOs. Full list can be found on the Perform Care website. It's a one-to-one parent support for all families active with CMO. It's important to kind of focus on this a little bit. So the CMOs, the care management organizations across the state, ideally are working with the whole family, but the child is who is open to our agency, right? We're helping the young person within that family. The family support organization, their main person that they're helping is the parent. Because with all of these services that end up getting put into place for the young person, parents and caregivers and guardians are a million other things, right? They're a husband, or they're a wife, they're, a daughter, maybe they're taking care of, 3 other children, they're a single mom, they're holding a lot of balloons. And although a lot of the supports that CMO provide are for the child and ultimately the family support organization is that go-to for that parent. And the coolest thing that I think about the FSO is all of the workers are parents who've been through this process. Not that any two situations are the same, don't get me wrong, but having a parent partner who has been through it, kind of understands the challenges, can level and listen and really kind of sympathize and empathize with another parent who's actively going through it. That's a support that you just, it's unmeasurable. It's incredible. Other services available, like I said before, to non-CMO families. Honestly, most of the resources from your local FSO are community-based, completely free. It's just that small group that might be open to the CMO has an opportunity to have a direct parent partner, that's a professional who's been through the process, linked to your family the same way the family gets linked to a specific care manager from the CMO. That parent partner will follow up with the family, just kind of like help them through the intense process, because in the beginning it can become very overwhelming. There's a lot of different things happening. There's a lot of things to remember. So having that support from the FSO is incredible. But that is the only difference between what this agency offers the general community and what gets offered to a CMO family, if you will. So some of the services are parent partners, of course, the Nurtured Heart approach trainings, support groups. They have groups for mothers, for fathers, for grandparents. There's teen groups. They provide help accessing other services, of course, advocacy, help with school and state services, resource referrals, tons of workshops. Audrey works at the FSO in Camden County, and they have, their monthly calendar is just full of resources for families. It's just really incredible. So please, if you are hearing about this for the first time and you live in Essex or, Burlington, please, please, please go to the Perform Care website and check out the list of the family support organizations and get connected to yours yesterday. Next slide, please. All right, so to gain access to IDD resources under Children's System of Care, the youth must be intellectually, developmentally disabled, eligible. If the child is under 18, applications must be submitted to Perform Care. Now, there are 3 ways to do this. You can do it through the online portal. You can download the application, complete it, and mail it in, or you can call Perform Care at 1-877-652-7624 and request an application be mailed to your home. I don't know about the other counties, but in Camden, our FSO has a specialized point person, Jean Bridges, who specifically will help navigate this process for a family. There have been changes over the years to the application to make it a little bit easier for families to navigate and complete, but nonetheless, it is a daunting task. It is very rigorous and intensive. So again, reach out to your FSO. Perhaps they can help in whatever county that you live in to help families navigate this process. But in order to tap into specific services available to the IDD community under Children's System of Care, the child has to be deemed eligible. In order to have that eligibility determined, you have to complete the application. So again, 3 ways: online portal, you can download and complete it and mail it in, or you can call Perform Care and ask them to send you one to your house. Next slide, please. Okay, so CSOC approved IDD specific in-home services. So just to give you an idea of what that looks like, if a family calls Perform Care and, describes anxiety, depression, maybe the child's being bullied, and they get approved for in-home services based on that assessment that is done by the licensed clinician, typically the CMO will help the family link with in-home therapeutic supports. So instead of the child going to outpatient therapy, they're not quite there yet, right? Maybe they're not stable enough or safe enough in that moment to do that transition. So what happens is the state provides that therapeutic intervention into the home setting. Our goal is to always transition to community-based, but just so you know, that's typically one of the services that is offered if a family opens up to CMO. Now, if the young person is deemed DD eligible, that in-home therapeutic intervention, other doors open to different types of clinicians that can come into the home and help the family. One of the common resources is IIH Clinical, which stands for Intensive In-Home Clinical Services. It's basically a licensed level therapist who has extensive experience with the IDD population. The IIH Clinical is very similar to an IIC, which is just your standard in-home therapeutic therapist, but designed specifically for the IDD youth population. Another option for families that have tried multiple strategies and are still struggling, maybe, the child might be autistic or nonverbal. There's intensive in-home IIH behavioral option, which is the functional behavioral assessment, an FBA, and applied behavioral analysis, ABA, which is a set of habilitative resources and services designed for de-escalating dangerous behaviors while assisting youth in acquiring and retaining self-help, communication, and adaptive skills. A focus is put on a transfer of skills to the youth while working with and training the youth's parents and caregivers as well to implement the behavioral plan. So IIH behavioral is the second option after IIH clinical has been tried and exerted. There's also individual support services that become available to a CMO family if the young person has that DDD eligibility. ISS services are skill development for individual support services, is skill development for activities of daily living, including self-care tasks. So that's just an idea of some of the options that become available if and when a young person is deemed DD eligible under Children's System of Care. Next slide, please. So New Jersey Family Care and Medicaid coverage for ABA services. So April 1st of 2020, New Jersey Family Care, New Jersey's publicly funded health insurance, including CHIP and Medicaid, covers ABA services for children birth to 21 with an autism spectrum disorder, ASD. You can visit the Autism New Jersey's website for more information on New Jersey Family Care, Medicaid coverage of ABA services at that website provided. This presentation will be available after the workshop today. So all of these links will be clickable for you. So don't worry about having to write them down or get upset because the slide's about to change. Next slide, please. So what to expect once IDD eligibility is approved. The family's care manager, or CM, will review with the child family team the IDD in-home services such as IIH clinical or IIH behavioral services, such as applied behavioral analysis, ABA, like I mentioned on 2 slides ago. The CMO walks the family through their options related to CSOC approval, Perform Care resources. All services are based on clinical need, which is determined by Perform Care, not the CMO. If and when IIC, IIH, or ISS and or BA, which is behavioral assistance, services are not enough, your care manager will help review options for potential out-of-home treatment, OOH. The CM assists the family with the documentation required by Perform Care for clinical review and approval of out-of-home services if and when appropriate. It is always the goal to keep the youth at home, in school, and in their community. So it's important to talk a little bit about out-of-home treatment. Again, because sometimes CMO services get interchanged or confused with DCP&P. If DCP&P is involved and the child is being removed from the home, that's out-of-home placement. That means that there was, permanency and protection challenges in that particular situation. With CMO, whether the youth is IDD eligible or not, if out-of-home treatment is being discussed, all that means is that the efforts to stabilize the youth and family in the community has been unsuccessful and the child is still struggling. So out-of-home treatment is just that. The child will, if the family agrees, again, our services are voluntary, the child will leave the home, go to a facility and receive intensive 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, therapeutic intervention, groups, and be monitored for safety. Once they meet their treatment goals, they will go back home with in-home therapy and a behavioral assistant until they're able to meet the need, like to be safe enough to go to community-based resources. It's not a reflection of the parent in any way, shape, or form. Out-of-home treatment is just that. It's just treatment. And then the child comes back home. Whereas with DCP&P, it's out-of-home placement. So sometimes people get confused because the language can be pretty similar. So I just wanted to make sure that I made that distinction, that out-of-home treatment under Children's System of Care is just that. It's treatment based on a clinical need, not removing a child for protection and permanency. Next slide, please. So what types of IDD family support services are available? You have educational advocacy, respite care, assistance with costs of summer camp, and assisted technology. A service provided to, All right. A service provided to IDD eligible youth and their families when the youth necessitates in-depth help with educational related needs. Respite care intended to provide temporary relief for the primary caregiver from the demands of caring for an individual with disabilities during the times when the caregiver would normally be available to provide care. Assistance with cost of summer camp is pretty self-explanatory, and assistive technology. Sometimes schools offer these technologies, but they need to be turned back in at the end of the school year. Well, that's not really helpful if Johnny responded really well to having assisted technology. If the family is deemed DD eligible and they complete the application with Perform Care for family support services like this, they might be able to get funding or, take advantage of having their own family's device that they don't have to give back or turn back into the school, which could be really helpful. Next slide, please. So getting into a little bit of respite care, I know that this conversation tends to come up a bit because there's different aspects of this process. There's agency hired respite, which is a service provided to families who want a respite worker who is recruited, trained, and employed by the qualified agency to provide social and recreational experiences to children in or out of their homes. There's self-hired respite, a service provided to families who want to recruit their respite worker of their choice. The family pays the worker directly and sends the paperwork in support of reimbursement to the provider agency on a monthly basis. There's agency after school care provided by community-based agencies. After school care programs have individual criteria, including specific age and supervision needs, and are close to the child's residence. After school care is provided at an agency site and not in the child's home. There's agency weekend recreation. Weekend recreation provides social and recreational experiences for children outside of their home, sometimes including a community outing component, Friday evening through Sunday. It is the caregiver's responsibility to provide the transportation. And then there's overnight respite, which allows the child to stay overnight in a safe, short-term, alternate living arrangement. Each youth may attend up to 6 days in a rolling 365-day period based on availability. Services must be provided in a licensed facility with round-the-clock supervision and care. Next slide, please. Eligibility for IDD family support services. In order to be eligible for family support services, FSS, not to be confused with FSO, the child must be deemed or determined eligible for IDD services through Children's System of Care. Eligibility for functional services before applying for SSS. The child must live in the community either with a family member or an uncompensated caregiver, and all benefits for which the individual may be eligible, such as SSI and private insurance, must be accessed before accessing FSS resources. Family support services are not entitled or guaranteed, and the ability to provide services to your child is contingent upon the availability of CSOC resources. Just another reason why it's important to complete the application and take advantage of all available resources. I know some families say that, they're doing okay and they don't think that they need CMO services. Even if you don't think you need the in-home interventions, I would still complete the application just because it might be okay now, but maybe you need some help later. It's better to get it done and out of the way. This way, if you find yourself needing respite services or assistance with summer camp, because that can get really expensive, or you want to try ABA services to see if that would help, you have to have that eligibility anyway, and it's a very long process. To my knowledge, I think the quickest I've ever seen one is 6 months get approved. So please, when in doubt, even if you feel like your family has great connections in the community and you feel supported, I would still recommend calling Perform Care, completing that application, and connecting with your family support organization. Next slide, please. So how to apply and request IDD family support services. The telephone application takes approximately 20 minutes, and you can call toll free at Perform Care 1-877-652-7624. Again, Perform Care is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365. Only the parent or legal guardian can apply for family support services. Perform Care evaluates for family support services based on the individual's needs, the caregiver's needs, and the current services being utilized. Next slide, please. Applying for determination of eligibility for people with intellectual developmental disabilities who are 18 years or older. If the person is 18 years or older, applications must be submitted to the Department of Human Services, DHS, Division of Developmental Disabilities, DDD. CSOC will honor, CSOC again means Children's System of Care, will honor determinations of eligibility and provide DD services made by DDD for individuals between the ages of 18 and 21. Eligibility for services from Children's System of Care ends the day before an individual's 21st birthday. And then there's a link for you for the DDD website for their application. Next slide, please. One of my favorite things to ever talk about in life. Okay, so there is a resource net for each county in New Jersey. The image that you see on the right side of the screen has logos. Those logos represent the care management organizations across our great state of New Jersey. Each CMO, care management organization, manages and operates their county's resource net. So ResourceNet is a free web directory of programs, supports, services, and events for families specific to that county in New Jersey. It is mobile friendly and can be translated to different languages, printed and or shared through social media. Each resource net is administered by that CMO's office. So for example, I'm the community resource director for the Camden County CMO. I manage the Camden resource net. So when we get submissions of new community resources that are trying to advertise and market who they are on the platform, I review it, I approve it, and then I connect with that agency. The websites across the state have tons of features. So it's not just a hub for all of the resources that you come across. It's also a way for you to find out what's coming up next. Is there an event? What month is it? When does it expire? Like, how do I get connected? There's a news and events tab. There's just a lot of features and each county has one. So it essentially is replacing old-fashioned resource fairs where a family would get, you know, a tote bag full of brochures and business cards. Because let's be real, we don't know what we need until we need it. Now there's a searchable database, just like Google. If you go to your county's resource net and you go to the search bar and you type in what you're looking for, whether it be karate studios or a local Baptist church, where's an outpatient therapist, you put in keywords and you hit enter and the system will generate you responses based on what you're looking for. The site is only as good as what goes into it. So again, each CMO agency is actively advertising and marketing their resource net in their community. So for example, all of the agencies that you see on the conference website that, you know, service the IDD community, both youth and adults, have been encouraged to join the resource net in whatever county they're affiliated with. If you're an agent, if there's an agency that's maybe in all counties, then it would be on every resource net. So it's just free marketing, but more importantly, it helps parents, caregivers, and professionals better connect with what's in the community and know what's available without having to sift through. I'm old school, I have a Rolodex on my desk, without having to sift through a bunch of business cards or brochures. So if you've never heard of this before and this is news to you after the conference tonight, please go to Google, whatever county you live in, type in, you know, Middlesex resource net, and your resource net will pop up. It's a pretty cool site. Check it out. If you have any questions about your resource net, contact your local CMO because that's who manages it. Next slide, please. It's the last slide. Look at that. That was pretty quick. All right. So Children's System of Care serves youth up to 21 years of age and their families with emotional, behavioral, developmental, intellectual disabilities, and or substance use challenges at no cost to the family. Perform Care helps connect a parent and or guardian to appropriate services for their child through Children's System of Care. Don't forget, if you need to call Perform Care, it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 at 1-877-652-7624. And that's all I have today, unless you guys have questions for me.
Yes, April, I have a question in the chat for you.
Okay.
You have one too, Audrey?
Yes. Yes. You want to go first? You go first.
Okay, this person is saying one of the families they work with was told that agency respite is no longer available, or that they're only reimbursing, meaning Perform Care is only reimbursing. Is that accurate?
That would be news to me. Perhaps Audrey can speak to this, but again, when in doubt, a family can always call Perform Care and say, hey, I heard this. Is it accurate? And they can get direct information right from the state, because sometimes people hear things incorrectly, or maybe they misunderstood, but I have not heard that. But I don't want to say, for sure that that is accurate or incorrect. I would advise the individual who asked that question to call Perform Care and just ask them themselves. Audrey, did you hear anything about that? No, right?
No, I didn't hear anything about that at all.
Okay.
No. And sometimes it's always good to just contact your local, CMO or FSO too. If you hear conflicting things, let's say call the state and you hear conflicting things, it's always good to call one of our agencies just to get that, that initial person to person, more personal connection. This Perform Care statewide, where county to county is smaller, more connected to specific things in your area. So yeah, I would say definitely call. Just a quick message. It said a youth does not need to be receiving services with the CM. Oh, Amy already said that to everybody. Sorry, I apologize. I just wanted to follow up one thing. April, of course, does the best job presenting. She's like the best presenter. And I love hearing you talk about CSOC. It makes my heart happy how much you love CSOC and how much you put into this work and everything you do. But ResourceNet really is the best thing any family can ever have. It is such a great thing, and every county has a ResourceNet. So be sure to just check it out. Check it out. You might never know. You'll never know what you might need that you can find there. It's really a wonderful, wonderful resource at everybody's fingertips. So please make sure you get a chance to go through. I mean, it's helped so many families for things you wouldn't. It's not specifically youth gear too. It can be for marriage counseling or substance use. It can be for a lot of different things. So, make sure you get a chance to look through and see what you can find. Oh, here it comes. Yay.
Can you guys see it?
No.
Oh, it's a black screen again. Let me see if I can pull it up.
I don't
Let me see if I can
understand.
pull it up.
I was actually going to pull up the how-to video. Let me see if I could drop the link in the chat box.
Yeah, then
for
I
you
can
guys.
show you.
I don't know if everyone knows, but there's a cool site called Loom, Loom, and you can make videos of your computer screen. So I made one that kind of walks through the functions of ResourceNet across the state. So if you're able to, there's a link in the chat box. Feel free to click it and watch it. It's under 5 minutes in length, but it goes through all of the features of ResourceNet. Obviously, it's done on the Camden ResourceNet because that's where I live and work, but it's the same across the state. Everybody's RN is the same. It's pretty awesome.
And you can find so many different resources you never thought you would, like you could be stuck. Like, I want my kid to have an activity, and you will find tons of different things. You're like, hey, my kid might like that. And my son wanted to do parkour, and we didn't do parkour, but I found something else. I found a different program that he liked just as much. So you can find anything on there. And it's just again, you can be any age, any whatever you need. It's a really great resource.
For me, the best part about it is it's not me or Audrey going in and updating someone else's information. The way the system is designed is each resource and agency goes in, creates a login account, and updates and uploads their own information. Once they're approved that initial time into the system, they can make any changes they want. So their logo changes, or they add a location in another county or town. It's all in there for them. It's pretty awesome.
April, I got some questions for you.
Yeah, let's go.
One of them is, I know that with the care management organizations, they subcontract with private providers to provide in-home services and supports like the IIH, ISS, et cetera. When you were talking earlier about the IIH, that was indicating that it's a licensed person through, the private provider agency. What is the difference between a person, because we know they're licensed, so who is vouching that they have specific experience working with the IDD population when providing counseling and services versus the people without a diagnosis of an intellectual or developmental disability, and they're working with children in a mental health crisis or things, trauma response? Who is the one that can confirm or credential that they are experienced with the IDD community?
That is a fantastic question. I love that question. So all of the agencies that do any in-home work that are being paid for by Medicaid dollars. So Children's System of Care link that family with CMO, and CMO help link that youth and young person with in-home services, regardless of what the service is, right? Let's just say, for this case, it's IIH, right? The agency goes through a rigorous process with Perform Care to be eligible to even offer these services in the home. So before a family opens up to CMO, we have a pool of providers in each county across the state that have been CSOC approved, which means, let's say I own an agency. It's called High Five Counseling. I have 5 clinicians. I know they're licensed. I checked on the licensing board website. They're good. They're licensed, right? I then have to apply with Perform Care to be an IIC provider or an IIH provider, ISS, et cetera, right? If there's a particular service and niche that I'm trying to provide under Children's System of Care, Perform Care has to give me the wave of approval. Once you get the approval from Perform Care and the agency is approved and put into the cyber system, so they can even be linked to a CMO youth and family, that agency then reaches out to the CMO in the county in which they're looking to provide services. So if I have my agency, I live in Burlington County, I want to connect with the Burlington CMO because my office is in Burlington. So I reach out to them. I provide them all my information, my staff's clinical expertise, their license, workshops that they've completed, et cetera. And then I go through that process. So before I can even be exposed to the care managers and the families as a valuable, reliable, approved agency to do these services, I go through 2 rigorous processes of approval first. With the IIH, that's a really good question because, yeah, there's like, okay, if it's not an FBA or ABA services with a board certified behavioral analyst, I hear you. How do you gauge if, like, I'm a licensed clinician, like I have some experience with the IDD community, but I wouldn't feel clinically appropriate for some of the kiddos that I know our agencies are working with. I would say that process is gauged because the agency has to provide their list of clinical staff and trainings, licensures, et cetera, to the state to prove, hey, we're an agency that can provide IIH, and this is why. This is our clinical team, and this is their clinical criteria, et cetera. But at the end of the day, if a family feels for any reason that the therapeutic intervention and clinician that is linked with them is not a good fit, or for whatever their reasons, they're like, I don't like this, talk to your care manager. That is our job at the CMOs, is to help families navigate and coordinate these services. I used to be a care manager. I would say to my families all the time, how are services going? And they'd be like, well, I feel bad. You know, Linda's so nice, but I just don't think she's making a connection with our son. And I would say, hey, it's like deodorant in the grocery store. There's 75 different ones, not that they don't work, just might not work for you. We have preferences. It's like picking a doctor. How many doctors did you go through till you found one that you really liked? So what's most important is that families feel confident and comfortable knowing that there has been some level of criteria check, okay, across the board. But ultimately, if the family doesn't feel like the person that their child was linked with is maybe the best fit, I would say 100% communicate that at the next child family team meeting. And if you just had one and it's not for another 2 months, request one. So say to your care manager, I really don't think this is a good fit. I would really like to, explore other options. And, we'll have a meeting. We'll get the child family team together. It doesn't have to be personal. It's not something the family ever has to burden on their own. That's what CMO is there for. We don't make the parents have these uncomfortable conversations. As a care manager, I had to get on the phone many a time and essentially fire a therapist, not because they were bad, but it just wasn't a good fit, and that's okay. So hopefully that answered the question. Are there any others?
Yeah. Quick question for you. I just want to confirm this. And in the adult world, you're able to hire direct support staffing and pay through them with a DDD budget, which is funded through federal and Medicaid funds, right? State and federal funding through Medicaid. In the youth world, there's no counterpart to that in Perform Care, correct? Like direct support professionals.
No, but it is my understanding that the support coordination is similar to CMO. So if a family
Oh.
lives in Burlington and they're connected with the Burlington CMO, they're assigned a caseworker, a care manager who kind of helps navigate them. It's my understanding that in the adult world, the family has an option to pick who their support coordination agency is, but that essentially the work being done is very similar to the CMO services. So to answer your question, yes, technically, you don't have a choice with Perform Care because it's based off of where you reside and what county you're in. But the work that we do, the work that the CMO agencies do, there's situations where maybe the family isn't connecting with the care manager. And we've had situations where we moved a family from one care manager to another. Hopefully that answers the question. It depends. It's situational.
Yeah, well, actually, it's about direct support. So the youth world and adult world and case manager are very different.
Okay.
And CMOs, they're very hands-on. You guys do a lot of things for people. You bring the providers, you authorize the providers, etc. In the adult world, there's the support coordinator only manages the budget, and then they provide resources, and the family picks them out and says, "This is what I want to use."
Okay,
And
I
help to
see.
design the young adults or the person's life with the family. So
Okay.
it's very kind of hands off, where with
Okay,
care management, it's very hands-on.
Right.
Which is one of the biggest challenges when families are transitioning from CMO to support coordination. They have that expectation that the support coordinator will do what the care manager does. But the actual question in the chat is more pertaining to direct support. So people that bring a person out into the community, maybe help them, teach them life skills, do laundry, drive them places. In the adult world, they're called direct support professionals, DSP.
Okay, that would
or
be similar to
SDE.
ISS services. Okay,
So
so
is that offered in the youth world for somebody that's 18 years old? ISS? Is that not? Okay, perfect. So a person would
ISS services, sorry to interrupt, ISS
No,
services
please.
can go alongside of IIH and
Okay.
BA. So IIH again is clinically level with in-home therapists for a non-IDD kiddo, okay? Then BA services are behavioral assistance. So for
Right.
example, I do therapy work with a kiddo in Burlington. I connect and collaborate with the behavioral assistant. I say to him, hey, this week we talked about anger, aggression, and social skills. And then when the BA works with the child, they'll go off of what was done in talk therapy and put it into motion, like hands-on. They'll take the kid maybe to the park or out into the community and say, okay, this week you learned about anger management skills. Let's put it to the test. Play a game of basketball. How are you going to behave or interact with the other people or react if you lose, right? So BA puts it into motion. ISS services will help that young person. Let's say they're 7 and they're struggling with potty training or daily hygiene. The ISS worker will literally help the young person in the setting go through those motions. But let's say it's an older kid. Let's say it's somebody who's getting ready to maybe go off to college and do a program, but they don't know how to ride the bus. The ISS worker will help them in whatever life domains they're currently struggling in. So they'll go out in the community with them, coupled with the BA and whatever therapeutic intervention is in place. So ISS services are phenomenal for this, for the hands-on, whether it's in the home, learning daily living skills, or out in the community.
So do you need to be in crisis to receive that service?
No, but you have to have IDD eligibility.
Right. So do you also need to have, do you need to be receiving in-home? Because from my understanding, Perform Care is not going to just give ISS. They're going to require you to participate in the mental behavioral health care component as well. Like it's not like a la carte where you're just coming in and you're saying, I only want community supports.
Well, that would depend. I think one thing that's really important is everything with Perform Care and Children's System of Care is individualized. So it would depend on how the care manager communicated the need in the cyber system. So for example, let's say it's a family that maybe already has an outpatient therapist and the child is doing well for the most part with mood regulation or anger and aggression, and there's really no issues in those areas. But the challenge is daily living skills, being able to do things safely and effectively, where ISS services would be fantastic. If the family has completed the IDD application and the child is deemed DD eligible under Children's System of Care, that
Mhm.
care manager, when they're updating the families or the young person's, what do you call it? It just left my brain. There's a
ISP?
particular,
ISP.
yeah, right? The ISP and the updated strengths and needs,
Mhm.
they can communicate to Perform Care and say, hey, all of these areas are great. This is our area of focus. So the only service we're really asking approval for is ISS. I don't see a reason why that wouldn't get approved if the family isn't actively receiving ABA services or IIH services at that time, because it's all individualized. It depends on what that child, young adult needs in that moment, how it's being communicated to the state.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any others? I love this. Like, I'm such a nerd. I'm like, give me a good question.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk about family support services for the CSOC population? How after you're DD eligible, you can access family support services to help navigate the camp and things like that, or?
I have one
Yeah.
more question in the chat before you do that, if that's okay.
Yeah, let's go for it.
My child is turning 18 in mid-November. Family and neighbors have been helping out with supports, but they can't do that anymore. We applied to DDD when she was younger. Her case transferred to Perform Care. Should we apply to a different group since she's turning 18?
So if I understand correctly, there's a DD application under Children's System of Care that was approved. So this young person is already in Perform Care system as approved for IDD, correct?
That's what it reads as if,
Okay.
yes.
The next step would be, is CMO currently open and active? Is the family currently linked with their county's CMO and has an assigned care manager?
No,
No. Okay. I would call Perform Care. I'm assuming at some point, because the application was completed and submitted and they know that they have the approval, there at one point was open active CMO. I would call Perform Care, say that you were open before, you have an active, already approved IDD application on file. They will find the child in the system with the cyber ID number and then ask to be relinked to the CMO office. What we start doing at 16 and a half are DDD roundtables. So in Camden anyway, we got really lucky. DDD is on the second floor. We're on the third floor in our building in Voorhees. So when we have a young person who's approaching the aging out process from Children's System of Care, if the family feels like that young person is eligible for DDD as well as in the adult world, you can always go to DDD's website to kind of look at their application and get an idea. We start having roundtable meetings with DDD early to plan and prep for that. Like Bill Freeman was talking earlier about the IEPs and how each year there's certain things that you're working on, because we don't want transition time to come and you're like, oh my God, what do I do? So I would get reopened to the CMO. I would ask for those roundtable meetings to start taking place so that conversation can happen. And then it's my understanding, depending on the clinical diagnosis, some kiddos are being almost grandfathered into adult DDD from Children's System of Care. So that would be one of the questions as the parent or guardian that I would want to know. Do I need to complete the DDD application as I get ready to leave Children's System of Care with my child? Does that make sense?
yes, and I can
Okay.
answer that. They actually do need to complete a DD application, whether
Yes.
you're in Perform Care or not. So if you're already in Perform Care, they call it the short application. It's only 2 or
Yes.
3 pages. And
Yes.
if you're not yet with Perform Care, it's 20 something pages and it can be quite an extensive process. Another question I had too, care managers within the CMOs, do they assist with filling out that DD application? And also, do they help with this transition process into the adult world when a person is aging out of care management services?
Yeah, so I can speak to Camden because that's where I work and that's what we do. Yes, in Camden anyway, we have designated care managers who have extensive training in this particular population. So they better understand the services from Perform Care, how to access them through cyber, how to write the reports and things of that nature. In Camden, our FSO, like I said earlier, has a specific point person for application processes because it's very overwhelming. It's very difficult. I don't know if every FSO across the state has that person. However, if the family is open with CMO, they can ask for a parent partner, and that parent partner during their meeting time can help them with that process. The care management organization can assist, but I don't want to be misleading with that. So a few years back, I ran a workshop with our local FSO, and we for hours just helped whoever came through the door with an application. It is not easy. It's not something that's quick, like, oh, hey, like Amy just said, it's 20 pages for the adult DDD application. However, yes, I would tap into the FSO in your county. I would definitely ask your care manager. If your care manager in whatever county, kind of you feel like maybe they're brushing you off, just ask to speak to a supervisor and say, hey, I'm really struggling with this application. I need some help. Between the CMO in every county or the FSO, 100%, we will find someone to help that family navigate that process.
Also, April, parents can call if they're not happy with the response from the FSO or the CMO, they can call the DD eligibility unit directly and ask for, they can call Perform Care and ask to speak to somebody in DD eligibility. And there are people there who can help specifically with that if they're not happy with what they get from their local agencies.
Right.
It's a lot to go through. It's a lot of it, as anybody who's done it, it's a lot to go through with what evaluations. They don't list like, they say WJS 543. It doesn't give you like Woodcock Johnson to evaluation this year. It's very cryptic and it's hard. It's also very emotional, which is why the FSOs try to take it on and help the parents, because it is, everybody in my office, everyone in our FSO in Camden where we work has a DD application for their child. We've submitted and been approved for eligibility, every single one of us. So we can help. That's a little bit more of an emotional journey than, just
Right.
paperwork.
Right. Amy, you have your hand up.
Sorry, another question in the chat. Does a person have to be, can a person have FSO without CMO services?
Yes. The only difference is they won't be able to ask for a family support parent partner to come to their home. Anybody in the community can access the FSO at their office. Most of them are doing virtual resources, in-person resources. Again, I can only speak to Camden because that's where I'm affiliated and where I work. But in Camden, our FSO, because our county is so large, has multiple collaborative locations to meet the needs of everybody in the county who might not have transportation. So to answer the question, 100% free, 100% community-based, and it blows my mind. I'm always just very confused why schools don't know more about this, and parents and caregivers across the state are unaware of the benefits of the FSOs in each county. Probably because there's misconceptions and myths about pretty much everything nowadays, but it is important that everyone knows it is 100% free, community-based, and anyone can tap in. The only difference is if you do have CMO, you have an option. You don't have to, but you have an option to have a parent partner come into your home the same way the care manager does.
And as for, if I can just interject real quick, every FSO offers warm lines, which a warm line can be different things, different agencies do different things. You can call your local FSO and say, what's the warm line eligibility? A warm line can be anybody can just call. Sometimes, I'm pretty sure every FSO, if it's a situation that needs 1 or 2 or 3 in-person visits or 1 or 2 or 3 support resource meetings, they'll absolutely do that. In certain FSOs, like our FSO example, you don't have to have, we just have community partners, so every FSO does things differently, but a warm line to call your local FSO and ask what their warm line procedures are. Sometimes it can be, again, just a phone call. Sometimes it can be in-person work, 2, 3, 4 visits. Every FSO offers parent and caregiver support groups. Every FSO offers youth partnership. So even if you don't have a direct person, like April was saying, a CMO paired person, you can go to a support group and ask a million questions in that caregiver support group and get all the information you need just from that group. So there's a lot of different ways to access this really great resource. So you can just call your local FSO and ask for their warm line procedure, not a hotline, a warm line.
Right. There was also a question in the chat. It was directed just to me, but I think it's important to just kind of shed some light on it. So pretty much the presentation I did tonight is one that is often done for local schools across the state. Typically, it is a trifecta. It would be mobile response, the CMO in that county, and that FSO. Because again, the three of us work very closely together whenever a family is linked with the CMO. We do presentations at school, not just for back to school night where parents are present, but also for the staff, for the child study team, because this is a lot of information and it can get really confusing. And sometimes people have bad experiences because no system is perfect. I'm not going to sit here and lie and pretend that it is. So I know Audrey and myself and our mobile response have done countless presentations at local schools in our county. But just so you know, if there's any teachers on this line or a parent that is, affiliated with the school and is like, hey, I think this information would be really helpful for other parents. Maybe my school can request one. 100%, there's a community resource director, that's a me, at every county across the state with the CMO. And it's typically our job to do that, to go out and have presentations like this one tonight and educate the community on what children's system of care is, what can and can be done under the CMO, and how to tap into these resources. So we're happy to help where we can. And I say that confidently and speaking on behalf of all of the community resource directors in our great state.
Thank you so much. This has been very helpful and very informative.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
You got it.